been working on all kinds of energy initiatives in the town with the help of Mr. Neil Lewis and Sustainability Institute. He's always a great help to us. And so this is a exciting forum for me. We have some great panelists, and I'm going to introduce you to them. We have Clint Palmer. Where is he? He's giving us his material. Clint serves as a Vice President of Development for Deepwater Wind, very exciting for Long Island, where he manages the company's pre-construction projects and development activities. Prior to joining Deepwater Wind, Clint served as Vice President of Asset Development and Underwriting for Renewable Energy, and before that, as founder and president of the Redwood Power Company, which he sold to Enderon. Clint's career includes experience in project origination and development, financial structuring and negotiations, as well as analytics and underwriting for a variety of energy asset development projects. Very impressive. He earned his bachelor's degree in business from Ohio State and his master's degree in engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So Clint, and then I'm going to introduce actually all of the panelists first, and then I'll let Clint do his PowerPoint. We were going to have David Sharon from Empower Solar, but Tara Bono is going to take his place, so thank you for standing in and providing us with that presentation. And then we have Beth Fratieri, who I've known for many, many years. Too many, how many years? It's been a lot of years. From the Wood Network, yes. Okay, that serves as sustainability. Yes, used to be. Serves as the sustainability coordinator for Community Development Corporation of Long Island, as well as the regional outreach coordinator for NYSERDA on Long Island. Beth served as the director of Sustainability Institute at Holloway College, where she coordinated the Clean Energy Leadership Task Force, which brings together local municipalities to identify cost-effective ways to implement clean energy initiatives. She has received the Environmental Quality Award from the Environmental Protection Agency. The award is the EPA's highest honor for those in the public sector and was given to Beth in recognition of her dedication to educating the public on environmental health issues. So we have a great panel, and I want to give them as much time as possible to present. You have 10 minutes for your presentation, and then because we wanted to go and give the audience as much time as possible for questions. So, there you go. Quick.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. My name is Clint Plummer. I'm Vice President of Development with Deepwater Wind. And I want to just quickly walk you through our project and why we think offshore wind is the smartest new energy choice for Long Island. So, big picture. We know that on the east end of Long Island, basically everywhere east of Riverhead, there's some real energy challenges. PSEG has said that within the next 10 years, we need to build several hundred megawatts of new capacity because that's the point on the island at which we've got the greatest population growth and the least new infrastructure. We've got power plants that are on average 60 years old and a real challenge in building anything new on the east end. Deepwater Wind last summer leased a site from the federal government that's 30 miles offshore, so far that it can't be seen because it's over the horizon, but still is close enough to deliver cost-effective energy to the east end of Long Island. And here's where this gets really important. Offshore wind is a dependable and reliable source of new energy because it produces energy at the time when Long Island needs it the most. There are two lines here. The top blue line shows on average over the course of a given day when Long Island uses energy. And this is data from the New York Independent System Operator. The red line shows on average when offshore wind produces power. The point is that when the load on Long Island is the greatest during the afternoon and early evening hours is the point in the day when offshore wind is producing at its greatest output. So we help defer load on the system by delivering power when it's needed. So a project like the one we've proposed has the ability to have several really big positive impacts on Long Island. The first is we're going to increase Long Island's total supply of renewable energy by 50%. With that, we'll be able to reduce the consumption of oil and gas by about 7 million barrels per year just with this first project. And we'll be able to reduce air emission pollution by about 2 million tons every year just with this first project. Now, the big benefit of this project as compared to some other offshore wind projects that have been previously proposed is that it's really far away. Given that it's 30 miles offshore, even though the wind turbines themselves are very tall, they're over the horizon so that you won't be able to see this project from any of the beaches on Long Island. And because of that, because we're so far away, this project has a very high degree of popular support. So polling that was done last year found that when it's so far away that it can't be seen, 85% of Long Islanders approve of this project. So we're very confident based on our ability to deliver energy cost effectively and the ability to be popular. Now, offshore wind is new in the US and it's new on Long Island, but it's no means new around the world. Europe first started developing offshore wind over 20 years ago. This is the first offshore wind farm in the world. It was built off the coast of Denmark in 1991 and is still operating today. Europe today has over 2,000 wind turbines in the water for 6,500 megawatts of power. That's more power than Long Island uses in total. Last year alone, Europe put about 400 turbines in the water for about 1,500 megawatts of capacity. And for reference here, we're talking about 35 turbines for about 200 megawatts of capacity. So starting off in the US with a much smaller incremental approach than what Europe is currently doing, which is very manageable. Now, it's not just Europe that's doing this, by the way. The Chinese in 2007 put their first wind turbine in the water. As of 2013, they had about 100 turbines in the water. This year, they're putting about 300 turbines in the water. Japan as well, in 2013, put their first offshore wind farm in the water, a project that's going to repower the Fukushima nuclear plant with offshore wind rather than nuclear. So it's a big industry, and it's an industry that's finally starting to move forward here in the U.S. We're currently in construction on what will be the first offshore wind farm in America. It's a small demonstration scale project that consists of 5 turbines located off the coast of Rhode Island. So this is Block Island. Montauk is over here. You got the mainland of Rhode Island. We're putting 5 turbines in the water here and building an extension buoy that runs and plugs into the mainland of Long Island. And this project's moving forward. We started developing it in 2008, and we're currently in construction. That's the first of our wind turbine blades. That's sitting in a field right now in Denmark. We've taken delivery of all 15 of the blades for the project. And just for reference, you see how absolutely massive these things are. You can fit 3 Airbus A380s inside the wingspan of these wind turbines. And these are our nacelles. This is actually the second of the nacelle in Saint-Nazaire, France, being assembled, and those should start being shipped over. We'll have the first steel going in the water next summer, and will be fully operational by 2016. And what you see with these components is that they're massive. They are so big, in fact, that once you get to a reasonable commercial scale, like Deepwater 1, it makes more sense to be handling and doing the assembly of these components locally. And that's why offshore wind has the ability to be a major driver of job creation and economic development, and Long Island is perfectly positioned to benefit from that. If you look at the areas around the country where offshore wind is being proposed, you find that there are basically 2 big areas. One is the area off of southern New England. We own the site that's here that we propose to deliver energy to Long Island from, and then there's a site that's about 5 times the size of our site that will be leased next year by the federal government. There's also a big area off of New Jersey and some smaller areas that are a little further south of that. And then there's a massive area off of New York that hasn't yet been zoned, but is expected to start the process next year. Long Island sits at the very heart of the U.S. offshore wind potential. So it just makes natural sense that given the island's strategic location, its long history of advanced manufacturing with the aerospace industry, its large base of skilled trades, its waterfront access, Long Island stands to be the hub of offshore wind development in the U.S. And that's got the potential to be a major job creator. In Europe today, there are 58,000 people working in offshore wind. By 2030, that number is expected to be 191,000 people. And the U.S. Department of Energy says that by 2030, we can expect to have 43,000 Americans just in the Northeast working in offshore wind. The places that go first and develop the initial offshore wind projects will be the places that get more of those jobs, because those places will build out the skilled trades, the research, the manufacturing capacity. They'll be the places that are natural to attract more of the economic development associated with offshore wind. Thanks for your time. I'd be happy to take questions when we get in the conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think we're going to hold questions until all the presenters present. Okay? Sure.
Hi everybody, again my name is Beth Pateni. I'm with the Community Development Corporation of Long Island, and I'm helping to represent NYSERDA on Long Island. I'm a ROC, a regional outreach contractor, and there's about 20 or so of us around New York State. And it's exciting to be part of NYSERDA because, here on Long Island, exciting is sort of a good word, I guess. Confusing, frustrating, because NYSERDA didn't always have such a big presence here on Long Island because many of their programs are funded through the SBC, the Systems Benefit Charge, which LIPA and PSEG do not pay into, but National Grid does. However, now there's some new funding sources like the RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, that are allowing some more of these programs to be available here on Long Island. So the first one I wanted to talk about is New York Sun. So this is a statewide initiative from Governor Cuomo, basically to encourage the growth of solar statewide. So earlier this year, he made a commitment of almost $1 billion to encourage the growth of solar statewide, and that includes Long Island, which is very exciting. So it has a bunch of different goals, mainly 3 gigawatts of energy coming from solar by 2023. And a lot of different strategies for that. Some of it has to do with lowering the so-called soft costs, the costs associated with things other than the panels themselves. So they're doing things like training, trying to do some community solar, which I'll talk about in a minute. Also coming up with different financing mechanisms for people to reduce the upfront cost that's always a big barrier for folks. And also trying to work with low-income communities to see if there's certain things that could be done for them to encourage solar. So a couple of different models. Community solar is, or the concept of Solarize, which Empower participated in Brooklyn. There was a successful campaign there to just get this whole region of Brooklyn to go solar. And they interviewed all these different people, and I'm sure Tara can talk about it later, but really exciting to take away the cost of having to seek out people. It was like, here's the solar, we're handing it to you on a platter, basically. So it helps reduce costs for everybody. K-Solar is a program that's with NYPA, New York Power Authority, and again, just sort of hand-holding schools, helping them go through the process of getting solar and maybe even aggregating them. So that's another great state program. So on Long Island, New York Sun is administered by PSEG Long Island, so nobody has to deal directly with NYSERDA. You go through the same folks that used to work at LIPA, now they're at PSEG. Bob Warner is great. And the way it works is there are blocks of incentives that go down over time because they're basically trying to reach a point where they don't need to do incentives anymore, where the solar is just on par with the rest of the energy production. So there's Long Island, Con Ed territory, and upstate. And the program covers residential systems up to 25 kilowatts, small businesses up to 200 kilowatts, and then there's a larger program that's supposed to be coming in 2015. So if anyone wants to look up the PON, I know you all do, it's so fun to read. Public Opportunity Notice, 2,112. The current rebate right now is 40 cents per watt. It started out at 50 cents and there was so much backlog that it got used up within like a month. So I always say the best time to do solar is now because these rebates are gonna go away. So you can watch actually the dashboard online, like where things are at. We're almost halfway through the residential block right now. And there's a list of installers online as well, many that you can choose from Long Island. And of course we have Lycia, the Long Island Solar Energy Industry Association has a list as well. So financing, this to me is one of the most exciting things because for many years we did not have the option of solar financing that was being offered by the utility or the state. You know, some of the solar companies worked out arrangements with banks themselves, but now we have the state saying, here's some financing, finally. So they're offering residential loans up to $25,000, basically if you get a payback period before 15 years, which I think most folks do. So you see the interest rate there is about 3.5%. You can pay on bill, and it goes right through your PSEG bill, just as convenience. The money's just passed along to NYSERDA, or you can take a loan. And for small businesses, you can take loans of up to $100,000. Again, you have on bill or recovery loans. The participation loans. And the interest for on bill is 2.5%, or the way they do it is, let's say you take a $100,000 loan, you only pay 2% on $50,000. So they basically try to cut down the interest rate for you to make it a little easier. So another thing that NYSERDA is trying to do is work with municipalities to make sure they adopt good codes. So here on Long Island, we've been really successful with the Suffolk County Planning Commission coming forth with the LIUSP, the Long Island Solar Code, and most of Suffolk has adopted it, and I think North Hempstead, so we're just waiting for a couple of towns. And essentially what NYSERDA does is give them an incentive to do that. So there's still a bunch of villages that haven't adopted it. If anyone's from a village, you can get $2,500 just to adopt the solar code. And there's something similar also for electric vehicle charging stations. Basically just to make sure that the process is streamlined. If someone wants to put in a charging station, just make sure there is a zoning code, or maybe there's, parking spaces for them. So, simple stuff, and I'm happy to talk about it. And I brought handouts on all of this, by the way. Another thing NYSERDA is trying to do is train folks, because they realize that even though here on Long Island we're quite sophisticated statewide, on solar, statewide maybe not so much. So they're doing these trainings around the state to do some education with villages and towns on how to adopt good solar policies and encourage solar in their communities. So it's being coordinated by CUNY, the City University of New York. And in fact, there is one coming up on December 4th, right? There's Neil from Sustainability Institute at Farmingdale at Malloy College, so it will be held there. So anybody who's with a village or town, or encourage your villages and towns to come. And there's the website, it's training.ny-sun.ny.gov. I'm happy to give anyone a copy of this afterwards. I know I'm going quickly. So since I have this captive audience, yes, I know it's about efficiency, but I had to mention that NYSERDA offers free energy audits for your homes. For many years, we had a program called Long Island Green Homes. So again, it's a free audit. You get this information about your home, how to make it efficient, and it's totally free. And they also do the same audits for small businesses with 10 employees or fewer. So a professional comes to your office and will tell you how to make everything efficient. And what's important about this is that they look at not only the electric, but also the heating and your gas systems and insulation and things like that. Because I love PSEG, but if they come, they'll only look at the electric part. So it's just good to know the difference. So just to wrap up, a couple of other things to mention. If anyone's interested in geothermal systems, the same financing applies. I have information about that, about the financing that NYSERDA does. It applies to geothermal systems. There's also a PON, again, the Public Opportunity Notice to encourage small-scale wind on site. So it's incentives basically based on the size of the unit. So the bigger it is, you get a smaller incentive, but the total adds up to more. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I have information about that as well. And solar thermal, I just found out the other day, PSEG ended their program. So, and NYSERDA's program does exist, but it's only upstate. So not so much for solar thermal, which is something all the policy people work on.
There's a New York State tax credit for it, though. And
Yes.
It's relatively inexpensive, and for the high cost of energy,
Yes.
it pays itself off relatively quickly.
Yes, it does. I know. I've actually
Sorry.
helped a friend do it, and she loves it. She's heating up her pool with it, and absolutely loves it, and it does pay for itself.
Mhm.
So I guess maybe that's what we're doing. So I encourage everyone to check out New York Sun website and also all the efficiency and renewable programs that NYSERDA has, and also PSEG. I mean, obviously they're the main game in town, and they have a lot of the incentive programs that we should be looking into for efficiency and renewables. Thank you.
Wonderful. Gee, I thought this was going to be difficult. You guys, all right,
Pressure
Sharon.
standard.
Yes.
So, hi everybody, I'm obviously not David Sharon, I'm Tara Bono, representing David today. He sends his apologies that he couldn't be here, but I'm more than happy to be here. This event every year is, I love this event, I look forward to it, but it's especially important to me because it was actually 2 years ago, right after Sandy, that I was here sitting in this room, and I saw David give one of these presentations, and I said, wow, this is a great industry, they're doing really great stuff, and I thought the company was a great company. So I started working there a few months later, so here I am today. And I also want to give a shout out, Stephen Engelman is here, and Melissa Vu also recently joined our team. We met her last year at the Vision Long Island event also, so it's a great event to network and engage them. So happy to be here. Hold mine up. So just a little bit of background about Empower Solar. We were founded in 2003. We've been around for just over a decade. We have 60 people working for us. Everybody is in-house. We don't contract any of our work. So everything from permitting to engineering to installing, we do ourselves. We've done about 850 jobs, mostly residential, some commercial too, totaling over 10 megawatts of solar. And as of this week, we have 8 NAVSAP certified professionals working for us. That doesn't mean anything to you, but it's the highest level of training that you can get in the solar industry, so we're very proud of that. This is how our company got its start. David Sheeran and his business partner worked together on a collegiate team for the Solar Decathlon project. They put this project together and they won a bunch of awards for it and saw it going somewhere. So instead of just graduating and letting it go, they opened up a business and took off from there. So that was the birth of Empower Solar. Picture of another solar decathlon project that they worked on in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And so the reason we're here today is talk about what's been going on with energy in Long Island, where we're at today, and what's going on. I know there's another seminar today, the future of Long Island, but I just want to touch on it a little bit. So Long Island's current power supply mostly are our big plants. They're National Grid mostly. We have several of them undergoing repowering right now. We have several smaller plants. We have the Covanta and the other waste to energy plants. I see Ross here. We have Caithness as well. We have about 15 wind turbines as of the last update from PSEG. Most of those are on the east end. Onshore, I should mention, of course, no offshore yet. We have, of course, the biggest solar farm east of the Mississippi. That's at Brookhaven National Laboratory. There's 32 megawatts of solar there. Pretty impressive if you haven't gotten out there to take a tour. It's really cool. You can't stand in one part of the solar farm and see the end of it. It just goes on and on. It's really, really interesting. Right now we have just over 8,500 installations of solar on Long Island, but good news, we just heard from PSEG last month, or a few weeks ago actually, that they expect to hit the 10,000 mark this year. So by the end of the year, they expect to have 10,000 solar installations installed. And that's a huge growth. Just about 2 years ago, there's only 5,000. So it's more than doubled in the last few years. And we'll talk about why that is, mostly to do with financing that Beth mentioned and other things like that. But the future, other than that, it's offshore wind, battery backup is advancing. PSEG recently released their updated Utility 2.0 report where they're talking more about smart grid, real-time pricing, so time of use pricing, which really helps out with solar and wind and things that are a little bit more intermittent. Leverage market forces, and some of the towns and municipalities actually have goals of 100% renewable, including Southampton. So where's solar at in our region? So solar works really well on Long Island for one main reason. We pay the highest energy costs really anywhere in the entire country. The country pays about 12 cents on average per kilowatt hour. Here in Long Island, we pay 21 cents. Our neighbors in New York City pay about 22 cents. That's second only to Hawaii. Total number of solar companies in New York State. Thanks a lot to Governor Cuomo and NYSERDA and all the statewide companies, policies that are pushing solar forward. We now have 411 solar companies, 5,000 people working in the solar industry in our state. This year is actually the first year in history that there are more people working in the solar industry than the coal industry in our country. So that's really big and exciting. And in New York State, there's over 30,000 homes that are powered by solar. So if we were to power the entire island with solar power, we would need pretty much a 6 by 6 mile area. We know that there's no such thing, there's no open space that big, even the Pine Barrens, but we definitely don't want to cut down trees to go solar. We already have the solar farm out there. So what we do have is a rooftop solar though. There's a lot of potential, a lot of really big commercial buildings, lots of really great southern facing homes, east-west homes that work great also. So how much solar does a house need really to eliminate their energy bill? Really depends, every house is different. We wish that houses were the same and we could just say, all right, this is a package system and you get it, you get it, you get it, but every house is different. So we look at how much energy the home uses. Usually homes use about 12,000 kilowatt hours per year, that's about average. How much square foot they have on their roof, and then the pitch, orientation, and shading of it. So your average homeowner who uses about 12,000 kilowatt hours per year needs between a 10 and a 12 kilowatt system, and that depends on which way the roof is facing and what kind of modules they choose, high efficiency or standard. So about 800 to 1,000 square feet of roof space will get you there, and you'll be able to eliminate most of your energy needs. So the rebates and incentives that are available right now on the residential level, you can get a federal tax credit. I should mention it's an income tax credit of 30%. The New York State tax credit is 25%. It's capped at $5,000. Most people do hit that $5,000. And in New York State, we don't pay sales tax on solar, which is great. And then the utility rebate. And that link there links to the rebate platform. And we're at 66% right now, well, the second tier. So it's going very, very quickly. We expect to hit the next tier by the end of the year. We'll go down to 30 cents a watt after that. That's what a 10 kilowatt system looks like, just so you can get a frame of reference. And this is, probably can't read all of it, but this just illustrates what a 10 kilowatt system would do. So because solar energy will produce more in the spring and the summer and less in the winter and the fall season, when we size a system, we average it for a 12-month period. There's going to be no day, probably throughout the year, where you produce and consume the exact amount of energy that you need. So what we have is net metering. You can send energy back to PSEG when you're overproducing. You can pull those credits back at nighttime or their wintertime when needed the most. If you wind up producing more energy than you need, over the 12 months, they'll actually cut you a check for it, or you can use it as credit on your bill. There's a few different options for financing that are available right now. You can lease, which came about, we talked about that last year, it just came out. Third-party company owns a system on your roof, and pretty much you pay them every month for your energy instead of paying PSEG. It's a great way to go solar without having to put anything out of pocket and start saving right away. You do still get the New York State tax credit when you do that. Of course, you can still purchase it like you've always been able to. It's a really great return on investment. It's about 47 years right now if you were to purchase the system. On Long Island, the average family would probably save over $100,000 in avoided energy costs that go into the purchase. Or our new, very exciting, we're so happy that NYSERDA and on-bill financing are here in Long Island. It allows you to take out that low interest loan and pay for it directly through your PSEG bill. So it'll show kind of like an average, but your average homeowner who's paying like $250 a month can go solar, and their new bill between their energy usage and their solar loan will be less than, say, $150. So people are saving between $50 and $75 a month without putting anything up front. So it just goes through a little bit more details about that solar lease and the on-bill financing. With on-bill financing, you pick your term. If you want to just keep paying the same as you are now and be done with it sooner, you can do 5 years. If you want greater monthly savings every month, you can do 15 years. So we're flexible, and we base it on how long you plan on staying in your house, what your family's lifestyle is, what your cash flow is, and what you need there. So this is, I really like to show this. this is really scary. How many people pay over like $250 a month for their electric bill? Okay, so over the life of your system, you are gonna pay over $100,000 for your electric. It's kind of scary when you think about it like that, right? $250 per month, it kind of hurts, but you do it, right? But that's a lot. So if you purchase a system, this homeowner with that system that I showed would save over $120,000 after their initial investment. If they lease that same system, it's a 20-year lease, so they would save over $30,000 during that time. Or if they chose the on-bill financing option, that's a 15-year option, they would save over $86,000 over that 30-year life of the solar system. And solar systems can last 40 years, 30 to 40 years, but that's, 30 years is fair. It also increases the value of your home. So Bloomberg recently was quoted an article saying that solar is the next granite countertop. People are looking for this when they're starting to move into homes. Or if they don't have solar, they're looking for houses that are good for solar. So houses without peaks or chimneys or shading that they could easily have solar to in the future. I should mention I don't know if anybody is a real estate professional in here, but we're having a seminar next Tuesday, solar for real estate professionals. So see me afterwards if you're interested in that. One thing we recently presented to Long Island Builders Institute, this topic is very important right now, timely, building solar ready. So we see a lot of houses that are being rebuilt after Sandy, and a lot of people were very excited when they came to us and said, I'm rebuilding my house, I want to do it right, I'm going to do energy efficiency, I want to do solar, what should I do? So we tell them, southern facing roof, no chimneys, no blockage or anything like that. So we put together a whole package for builders and architects on how to build a solar-ready house. There's nothing that pains us more when a brand new house goes up and there's all different stuff going on the roof and they can never go solar. It's not really something that most owners think about automatically when they do that. We're starting to see more solar in building codes. California is expected to pass bills that require solar-ready roofs. Our partner SunPower in California is seeing this more and more. In Southampton, they're really pushing for that 100% renewable energy. So they're actually requiring for new construction, a HERS rating. So it's a home energy rating score, something like that. And as part of that, an easy way to get your score under where you need it is to add solar to it. So we're seeing a lot more solar going on in Southampton as well. Benefits to building with solar integrated, help our municipalities reach their targeted energy goals. More energy produced helps your HERS score, helps get more LEED points. We're working with some LEED homes in Southampton as well. And there's potential savings. If you're building a development and all the houses are pretty similar, it's a lot easier for us. We only have to engineer or design one system instead of doing a lot of different systems. So there's discounts for doing it there. And constructing it while you're constructing a house, there's savings there as well. Steven's here from our commercial division, but there's a lot of great incentives for commercial as well. We also have leasing available for commercial now as well. So of course you can still purchase it if you want to. There's financing through banks. You can do a capital lease or an operating lease. There's also power purchase agreement options as well. So that would be very similar to instead of buying the energy every month from the grid, you would buy it from the solar system and the financer from there. Some of our nonprofit organizations are taking advantage of that because they don't have that tax appetite to do some of the other options as well. So top businesses that are going solar, you can see many names that you'll recognize up there. Big guys are on the left. They actually completed a 400 kilowatt system on their building in Maspeth, Queens last year. It's producing 100% of their energy needs. BJ's, we also work on the BJ's in Deer Park. And SA Lauder was our biggest system. That was a 600 kilowatt system in Melville. Investors, they're really jumping on the bandwagon right now. They're seeing the return on investment and the profitability from renewables. So they're getting in and they're providing loans that are specific for renewable energy projects that work with the tax credits, that work with the financing options that are already available. One thing that we're seeing more and more of is solar backup systems that partner with solar. So especially after Sandy, a lot of the people that had solar with us already were a little bit disappointed after the storm that they had no power for 2 weeks and they had a perfectly good solar system on the roof that they couldn't use. So because when the grid goes down, by law, we have to shut down the solar system. We can't be sending energy back to the grid. It's a safety hazard for any kind of line workers that are expecting there to be no power in those lines. So what people are doing now is going back and adding battery backup systems, and they're picking their load. So if you want to keep a few lights on, maybe a TV, a mini fridge, that's one thing, and then you can scale it up from there depending on what kind of needs you have in the house. This, as we wrap up, I just wanted to talk about something really exciting for us. So we were in Island Park and we were very much affected, our offices, by Sandy, but we just moved to a brand new solar design center. It's still in Island Park, but it's above the flood zone, and it's resilient. So there's battery backup, there's solar on the roof, we have electric vehicle charging, we have 9 electric vehicles, all Chevy Volts. So if anything, knock on wood, would happen again, we can still stay open, we can still operate, we can still service our systems that may be affected. We invite everybody to come visit us. It's a showroom. It's right next to King Holland and Panera, so there's a big shopping center, a lot going on. This is us. This is our team. Kind of a cheesy picture, but I really like it. It's a beanbag. We had the idea of, hey, let's pretend the beanbag's a sun. And it's spontaneous, but it's fun. I just wanted to end on, we are a growing company. We're always looking for talented people. We have very good luck finding people at this event, so we just wanted to throw it out there that we're hiring for pretty much all of our departments. If anybody knows anybody who's interested, feel free to contact me afterwards. And we always like to end on the Empowering Way philosophy, professionalism, teamwork, excellence, commitment to clean energy, and client focus. We're very proud of that, and we always like to end on that note. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming today.
Okay, now it's time for questions, and thank you. There was a very wonderful presentation. Yes?
Yes, for there seems to be a large deficit in midday hours for wind production and energy needs. Would there be a way to address that with wind alone, or would you need to use other sources as well?
So our project is a very small part of Long Island's overall energy system. Long Island's got a peak of about 6,000 megawatts. Our project is about 200 megawatts in total capacity. So we're offsetting, we're displacing the dirtiest and the most expensive generation on the system. With that, we've got the ability to save money for ratepayers and clean up the grid fairly significantly. And with this small amount of wind that's being injected onto the system, there's really no reliability issues at this small scale. In fact, if you look across the rest of New York State, we're going to get very close to the 2015 target of 30% renewables, which is largely wind. On Long Island today, we've only got something like 7% renewables. So we've got a long way to catch up. Offshore wind is the only large-scale renewable resource that's proximate to Long Island. And with today's technology, we see how offshore wind is today the most cost-effective new source of clean energy for Long Island.
Okay, yes?
Mr. Plummer, can you speak to how you get the electricity from the turbine onto land? Or are there any issues with the seabed? Are there any issues getting it on shore, power lines?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so Long Island, as an island, already has a number of submarine transmission cables running from Connecticut, running from New Jersey. This will be the exact same type of transmission cable as we already have. It's just going to the offshore wind farm. This is pretty standard technology. There are literally hundreds of these systems in place all around the world. So it's a big extension cord, effectively, that runs from the offshore wind farm into a point on the east end of Long Island. The cable itself is buried 6 feet beneath the seafloor. There's a very long process of consultation with federal, state, and local governments, as well as all the other uses and the environmental concerns along that transmission route to make sure that we're laying it in the right area and that we're burying it so that it's going to be safe, it's not going to impact the environment. But this is all proven technology that's been done in a number of different places, including here on Long Island.
We're going to go for some of these.
As you had mentioned, the turbines are massive. I'm assuming the cost is massive as well. What is the ROI in installing a turbine? At what point do we see the cost savings?
Yeah, I think we can start seeing the cost savings on Long Island immediately. We expect that with this first project, and especially as we move forward, that we're going to be able to be the most cost-effective new source of energy for Long Island. So if you look at PSEG's Utility 2.0 plan, they identify a real need in the near term for new capacity to serve the East End. And they put pricing out there for that new capacity. Our cost of energy delivered to the East End is going to be lower than that considerably, so we know that we can be the most cost-effective new source of energy today on the East End of Long Island. And as an example of that, I need to caveat that by saying offshore wind makes sense in the places where it's difficult and expensive to build any other new source of energy. So we start with islands and we work from there. In the case of our Block Island project, I think of Block Island as a more extreme version of the East End. It's got no connection to the mainland today, and with that, they're basically barging over diesel fuel to burn in peaking plants like we have on the East End. So our Block Island project is going to save ratepayers on Block Island about 40% per year on their energy bills. The East End has some of the same issues. It's more connected, but it still has a large number of diesel-fired peaking units, and because of that, the cost of building and operating new generation on the East End is very expensive. We know that we can be more cost-effective than building new generation on the East End today.
Yes?
It's a great subject, I love it. So about 10 years back, they tried off the South Shore of Long Island, and that project ended, and I think the cost was beyond comprehension. How does your project differ?
Three very big things are different from that project and our project. Number one is technology has advanced very significantly. Over the course of the last 10 years, the Europeans have invested tens of billions of dollars in both projects and research and development that allow us to build these projects in deeper waters with bigger machines that are more cost effective. So because of that, the cost has come down very significantly. The second thing that's different is because we can put these things in deeper water now, we can put them farther offshore. So that project was, I believe, at its closest point, 4 miles from shore. This project, at its closest point, is 30 miles from shore, so it can't be seen. And that leads to the third point on how we're different, which is popular support. That project had a lot of opposition based on where it was, because people could see it, because it was close to some fishing grounds. This project, being so far from shore, doesn't have those objections. It's gone through a multi-year process led by federal and state agencies in consultation with dozens of stakeholders to identify a site that's most suitable. And so because of that, we have the inverse. We've got broad-based popular support, 85% popular support by polling, as well as endorsements of the project by most of the elected officials on the East End of Long Island. So we're very confident because the costs have come down, because it's so far you can't see it, because of its popular support, that this is a project that's going to be able to move forward much more quickly than that one. And just as an example of that, we've proven that we can do this. We started developing our Block Island project back in 2009. January 2009, we signed an agreement to develop the Block Island project. We're now in construction. So we've shown that in 5 years, we can go from concept to construction. We're very confident we can do the same thing here.
And I would just add to that, having worked on the original project, there was still 70 and 80% public support in general, but it helped to sell the newspapers that there was so much controversy.
I don't remember you.
Well, let's get that thing real quick. Are people signing up for these you mentioned the home energy orders, which we got about 10,000 people on Long Island in the last 3 years, and Connie always mentions it in her various newsletters for Long Island Green Homes. But what about small businesses? So you mentioned there is a program, but my experience is a lot of businesses are renting. They may not own the building they're in. So if that's the case, should they call you? Are they still able to do the audits and something good come out of it?
Yeah, that is an issue because, I mean, ideally you should get the landlord to do it, but they're not usually the one that's the most motivated. But if you are renting and you still just want to save on your energy bills, it's still a positive thing to do. So I have worked with like a theater and an insurance company and a fire district, and there's a few, but I'm still going around to to chambers of commerce trying to talk people into it, and there's not too many signing up, but it's a free program, so I feel like might as well just do it. You know, it's only for small companies though, 10 employees or fewer, but it is comprehensive.
And if I could ask Tara, I think about half a year ago or so, we were talking about the potential of how the public would receive it when on-bill financing finally came around. It looks like the numbers have really shot up. Is that in part because of the most recent change to allow on-bill finance? I get the sense that a lot of people still are not aware that this is an option, that they know there's leasing out there because that's kind of got into the mindset of the public. But does the public realize there's really just as good and another alternative option to consider?
Yeah, I'm not sure if everybody knows about it. Certainly the word is leaking out, but I think you're right that leasing is, that free solar and all those advertisements that you see are probably on the forefront of people's minds. But I think the educated consumers and the ones that have done their research really see that on-bill financing has its benefits. And it was a delayed outcome. So it only came out in August, but it was talked about in Newsday in April. So people who in the beginning of the year had thought about going solar, they were waiting for it. So I think that's why we've really been so busy in the last 2 months, because people were holding off, and then it happened, so they pulled the trigger, and now we have a lot of projects coming through the pipeline, so that's a good problem to have.
And Clint, was it necessary that you have to be a really tall person to work in the wind field? It just seems like...
Deepwater is an equal opportunity employer, and we expect to be hiring several hundred people for this project.
Short people too.
Short and tall.
Okay, anybody, go ahead.
Yeah, great presentations, everyone. A quick question for Tara and for Beth. You talked a lot about the opportunities for homeowners and for small businesses. Are there opportunities for the landlords that own a number of rental properties that might help out the lower income renters or middle income renters that are in these kinds of
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are definitely there, but like Beth said, they're usually not as motivated because the cost of energy is usually paid for by the tenant in most cases. But they're certainly there, especially in cases of big commercial scale projects as well. There's definitely some benefits. They're going to be there for long term.
I'm going to sneak in a question here for Tara. Do you have sample legislation for the solar-ready roofs?
I can certainly get that for you, Connie, yes.
Okay, yep.
Tara, you had mentioned that the solar panels, I guess, have a shelf life of maybe 30 years. So at that point, what happens? You're actually replacing the panels themselves?
Yeah, so depending on which panel you go, just as an example, SunPower is our partner in California. They're hands down the best panel out there, and they have a manufacturer's warranty and a power production guarantee for 25 years, but they're expected to last 30, 40 years. There are panels working right now that have been, well past their life. But yeah, at the end of their life, you just take it down. It's probably time to redo your roof at that point anyway, and then you go on to the next best thing.
Any other questions?
How you doing in terms of the wind farm? If you see the paper that you handed out, it shows it's a pretty big spot on the map. So how you doing with the commercial fishing industry? We've, Beth mentioned sitting through meetings where you have to hear people that are sometimes minimally informed on this stuff complain about it. It can be tough, but the commercial fishermen have been kind of shameless in their opposition to wind in terms of some of the arguments that they've made. Obviously, there's fishing in Europe. So, how does that?
So, a couple of thoughts on that. First, we're confident that these two industries can coexist. Now, on a personal note, I grew up on a dirt farm in western Ohio, and I see a lot of similarities between the farming community and the fishing community. Both are things that are dependent on a natural resource that you don't always control and are subject to a lot of government regulation that oftentimes makes their lives very difficult. So we empathize a lot with that community, and we understand that because of those economic pressures, they're a community that is very vocal in defending their areas. And so with our projects, we've spent 5 years building a very constructive working relationship with the fishing community in Block Island. At our permitting hearings there, we had a number of commercial fishermen that showed up and spoke in support of our Block Island project, and what they said was, we're not necessarily in favor of offshore wind, but that the developer in this case had been open and transparent and was willing to compromise on the construction methods and put in place the mitigation methods that would make this project acceptable. The bigger project is at an earlier stage of development. We've started the dialogue with the commercial fishing community that is fishing in that area, and we maintain that dialogue. The reason that this area is carved up in such a goofy looking way, the reason it's a shape that you wouldn't otherwise expect or draw on a map, is because several federal and state agencies spent a period of about 3 years working through a process in which they brought all the stakeholders to the table, including multiple different fishing communities, to identify what was the most acceptable area for development, and that's how we got this shape, because they excluded a bunch of other areas. In Europe, we know that these two industries coexist. There are no restriction areas. They can fish in between the wind turbines, and because they're over a mile apart, there's plenty of room to do dredging and trolling and dragging within the wind turbine array. So we're very confident these industries are going to be able to coexist. Building the level of support here in Long Island that we've had in Block Island is just a process. We're in the early stages of that.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Another one back, has to do with fishing. Has there been any studies on the fish aggregate potential at Deepwater One?
Yeah, well, so what we do know is that if you look at the development of offshore structures like this, both oil and gas structures in the Gulf of Mexico and offshore wind structures in Europe, these structures become artificial reefs because you're adding complex bottom terrain, which is great for things like lobster. You're also creating thick structure that attract barnacles and other forms of life. So these ultimately become fishing hotspots for recreational fishing. If you look at the Gulf of Mexico, there's lots of recreational fishing tours that go out and tie up off of offshore oil and gas. We expect that there will be the same sort of attraction here.
Okay, we have time maybe for 1 or 2 more questions. Anybody?
Just a quick question about the wind turbines themselves. How long can they function without needing replacement or repair? Because if they need repair every 5 or 10 years, I don't know if that's really going to be cost effective.
Yes, so we as a developer bear the full cost of owning and operating that wind farm. And so we are providing power at a fixed price. So that's our risk. But in terms of the operation and the maintenance of these, I showed a picture of Vindeby, which is the first Danish offshore wind farm, which was built in 1991 and is still operating with the original machines. The machines for our Block Island project and for this project will be built by a large manufacturer like a GE or a Siemens. And for Block Island, we've got a 15-year warranty on the machines, absolutely unprecedented with other sorts of renewable technologies. But the machines themselves are expected to have a lifetime of about 30 years.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, a big hand for our panelists that did an excellent job.
Check the results. My man, how are you?
I remember turbines. But if it's
Hey Chris, I'm right here.